What's up, everybody, and welcome to the iPad mini versus the iPod Touch 5th generation comparison video and buyer's guide. I get this question all the time in my comments, so I decided to do a video. Let's start with the iPod Touch 5th generation and its 4-inch Retina display. This is the same display that you find in the iPhone 5, so it is very beautiful. The color replication is really good. The viewing angles are great, and it is extremely sharp. So the screen is top notch. Now on the left side, you will see the volume rocker up and down button. And on the bottom of the device, you see a single speaker, the lightning port, and a 3.5mm headphone jack along with the home button. And on the opposite side, there are no buttons at all. And you see the sleep wake button on the top and the HD FaceTime or iSight camera. The back features an aluminum finish, and on the bottom of that finish you see the new loop connector, which pops up, and you have a lanyard that attaches to the iPod Touch. You also see a 5-megapixel camera with an LED flash as well. Now let's get to the iPad mini here, and on the left side you see a volume mute switch and the up and down volume rockers. And on the bottom you see stereo speakers and the lightning port. And on the opposite side you will see absolutely nothing, just like the iPod Touch. And up top you will see the 5-megapixel camera, the sleep wake button, a microphone for audio recording, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. On the bottom you will also see that familiar home button. The two devices definitely share design language. Now let's go over the specs of these two devices. Internally, they share the same specs. They both feature an A5 processor with 512 megabytes of RAM. They both have a 5-megapixel camera on the back. They have an HD front-facing camera, and they come preloaded with iOS 6, and they both feature a premium build. But the differences are here is the iPod Touch has the Retina display, and the iPad mini does not have a Retina display. The iPad mini features a 163 pixel per inch screen, while the iPod Touch has 326 pixel per inch, about twice that of the iPad mini. So what is the iPad mini going to cost you? Well, it's going to cost you $329 for the basic 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi only model. Now you can get a 32 gigabyte model for $429, a 64 gigabyte model for $529, and you have to add $130, but it is available with 4G LTE connectivity. Now the iPod Touch 5th generation will cost you $299 for the 32 gigabyte Wi-Fi only model. And there is a $399 64 gigabyte model as well, but no 4G LTE connectivity. So what about the benchmarks? Well, if you look at Geekbench on both of these devices, you will see that the iPod Touch 5th generation is running at 800 megahertz, while the iPad mini is clocked at 1 gigahertz. Remember guys, benchmarks do not really tell you how these things run on a day-to-day basis, but they can kind of give us an idea of how the hardware and software are working together. So we'll wait for this to finish, and we get a 758 on the iPad mini. And we're waiting for the iPod Touch to finish, and it is 625. And that probably has to do with the higher clock rate on the A5 processor on the iPad mini. But I will do some further testing in this video to show you what the real world performance is on both of these devices. I'm going to start off by showing you just the touch response of both of these screens and just kind of navigating around the launcher here and the home screens. And you can see that they're both very responsive and they are performing with no difficulties on either of these devices. Now, let's take a look at some web browsing, and I'm going to hit go at the same time, and they are on the same Wi-Fi network, and we're going to go look at a full site. The reason I'm rendering a full site on both of these devices is because the iPad tends to render full pages, and they're kind of set by default. So I just wanted to make sure we get a good test. And you can see there that the iPad mini finishes first on this test, but not by much. But we'll do another one. We'll go ahead and load up the Verge's website since it's very graphically heavy. And we'll see if we get the same result. And the iPad mini does finish first, but the time difference is really not that noticeable. Now let's go ahead and take a look at both of their cameras. They both feature a 5 megapixel f2.4 stop lens on the back, and they both perform very well. And here is a shot taken with the iPod Touch 5th generation, and here is a shot taken with the iPad mini. They look pretty similar. And the same here. This is taken with the iPod, and this is taken with the iPad mini. Here's a sample video taken with the iPod Touch 5th generation of the Nokia Lumia 920. And here's that same Nokia Lumia 920 with the iPad mini. Not much difference there either. The one thing I did notice about photos though is obviously the screen. And if you're looking at pictures on the Retina display versus the iPad mini display, things just look a lot sharper on the iPod 5th generation. And remember, the iPod has a flash as well. And the mini does not feature a flash. But that's debatable because a lot of people do not take pictures with their tablets, so it may not really even matter that it does have a flash. But let's go into opening some apps here, and I'm just showing you there that there is nothing open on both of these devices. And let's go ahead and launch Infinity Blade 2 and see how fast it boots up. And let me get rid of this Game Center here, but you can see they're pretty neck to neck, opening a pretty graphically intensive app, which is Infinity Blade 2. Alright, now let's go into opening a few other apps like iPhoto. And it looks like the iPad mini finishes slightly faster on that test. So let's go ahead and take a look at something else. And we're going to go ahead and open up Mail. And that's about the same. So you can see the performance is very close to each other since they share the same internals. The iPad mini may be just a slight faster because of the clock speed, but opening Facebook here, just about the same. So the performance, I wouldn't worry about it. They both perform very well. Now, where the iPad mini wins here is the tablet interface. Since it has a bigger screen, it takes advantage of that, and where the iPod Touch 5th generation just has that same interface as the iPhone 5 does, so even though you get landscape mode, you don't get any extra functionality. And here is also another way that I think that the iPad mini might be right for you, is because if you're in school or you're a student or you're an avid reader, then I think this bigger screen is really going to be it for you, because looking at some of these cool textbooks now that they have, and this is a cool example of one, is definitely better on the iPad mini. Even though it doesn't have that high pixel per inch density of the iPod Touch 5th generation, you just have a lot more space here to read and to interact. And I think that if you are looking for something like a Kindle replacement, or you're looking for something to maybe carry some of the books with you, PDF files, I think that the iPad mini is something to consider for you. So if you're in education, I think you may want to try the iPad mini first in the store, and just to kind of get the feel of it and to see if it's going to benefit you. I think education is going to be changed by a lot of these tablets that are out on the market today, and I think the iPad has a pretty healthy ecosystem of these books, but you definitely wouldn't want to read these books on the iPod Touch 5th generation. Now let's talk about some video here, and I think that video experience is more immersive on the larger iPad mini screen, as you can see. But the video looks sharper on the iPod Touch 5th generation, but the speakers are also much louder on the iPad mini. So give that a consideration as well, since it's got dual speakers or stereo speakers. Now let's talk about video game performance. Since they both run the same chipset, you really don't see much difference here. They both run games very, very well, and the frame rates are great. And I don't think you'll have a problem at all. You just have to think about the feeling in the hand. The iPad mini feels good in the hand. It's pretty light, but for a gaming device, it's great, but it's a little bit bulky, where the iPod Touch 5th generation fits directly in the hand, and it'll be something that you're used to, something, especially if you're used to an iPhone 5, I think it's a little bit more portable as well. So think about portability when it comes to gaming and where you want to take it. Now let's talk about battery life on these devices. And I think the battery life is great on both because you could really run these both all day with moderate use for sure. But I did find that the iPad mini had a little bit longer of a battery by a couple of hours. As long as you don't abuse it and play video games on it constantly for 6 hours, I think that you'll definitely have no problem with a 1-day charge. So what do you guys think of these two devices, and which one will you buy? I think you really need to look at your needs and what you want, for they both share the same design language, the same chipset, pretty much the same camera. There are some advantages and disadvantages of each, but they're pretty much the same thing in a different format. So you have to think about, do you want the Retina display here with the sharpness, or do you want the larger screen of the iPad mini with some tablet functionality, with some reading capabilities, or carrying textbooks around? You really have to kind of ask yourself which one would be the best for you. If you need cellular connectivity, then you need to go with the iPad mini. But if you want more storage and more portability, and you listen to music a lot and need a lot of space, then the iPod Touch 5th generation will be cheaper. It could be a hard decision, and I know they're priced very close to each other, but I hope this video helped you make a decision. So please do me a favor and hit like and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. It helps me a lot, and it helps many others see this video as well. So please subscribe to my channel, and I thank you for watching.